Hello again, Dr. Rob here with Muscle Man, social media guru. Would that be fair?
I hate the word guru, but sure.
What's above a guru?
You.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Social media, my good friend who's been working with me for the last 18 months, helping me get out there, Chris Desi, Silverback Social. He's also a patient, and he has said that he'd be very happy to share a little patient story with everybody. So, Chris, take it away.
A big patient story. I had a very unique head injury, partially because I'm a meathead, and partially because, no, it's 100% because I'm a meathead. I was in a CrossFit class, cleaning the weight from the ground, putting it behind my back to get into a squat position numerous times throughout the WOD. For those of you that don't do CrossFit, that's the workout of the day. And the bar wasn't landing far enough down on the back of my shoulder. And what happened was I was hitting the back of my neck. Not what you want to do. By virtue of hitting the back of my neck, I hurt myself, but because of you, I didn't even realize that I concussed myself while I was doing that workout. I experienced the symptoms, which was fog. I woke up with vertigo. 2 days after I hurt myself, woke up with severe vertigo, and I was like, what is going on? The room was spinning. Came to you, you adjusted me, you were looking at me, and I remember when I think it dawned on you, is you looked at my eyes, and you were like, how do you feel right now? And I said, I feel like there's like a weight on my head and on my body, and you were like, okay, because your pupils are dilated. And from there, I went through, working with you with getting adjusted appropriately, but going through some, a regimen of vitamins, a regimen of taking care of my body and getting sleep and trying to come out of the fog. And it's been 4 weeks now, and I'm still experiencing some tertiary symptoms. But I know that I had concussions when I was a kid. I know that I got concussed when I played football in high school. I can name the specific times. I definitely know that I got concussed when I played rugby in college, because the way we all learned how to tackle playing high school football is not the proper way to tackle when you're playing rugby and you don't have a helmet on your head. I got concussed playing against the Naval Academy. I went to Loyola University down in Maryland and playing the Naval Academy. I remember I drove home. I didn't remember the drive home. So right now, in week 4 of the concussion symptoms, I'm starting to come out of the fog, come out of what I viewed as like, it was a depression. I felt depressed for 3 weeks, but I was cognizant of it. I was able to kind of like be on the outside looking in, because you and I talk about it so much, and you're always talking about head injury, that I knew all the symptoms, I knew what I should be expecting, but I was like, I'm not myself, couldn't focus, and realized that now in week 4, my short-term memory is a little skittish still. I was on vacation last week, and I was talking to John, my business partner, about what I did, and I was having trouble figuring out the days, and that never happens. Like, I can go through everything. So I'm still not fully out of the weeds. I'm on the road to getting better, but 2 things. It's scary as hell when it comes to your head, and it takes time, I think. So that's the story. You helped me, but I'd love for you to share what you did for me and what you've been doing for my neck adjustments, and even talk about the vitamins that you gave me and why that is essential to the recovery process. I think I'm lucky and in a unique place because I spent a lot of time with Rob working on his social media, and we've also become really good friends. So we hang out, we talk, we have conversations about head injury and how the gut is related to your head. We could talk about that too, how after you adjusted me, and I had some gut issues immediately after that adjustment because it's all connected, and I was like, this is so fascinating. But yeah, it's been a fascinating and kind of bizarre journey, because dealing with your head is a lot different than dealing with like a sore knee or a sore shoulder. It affects everything in your life and not just like one aspect of it.
Scary.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it was interesting. And it's funny, you remember, we did a whole bunch of lasers, but we'll get to it. He called and he said, I remember he said, I have some vertigo. That's what you were complaining about. And I used the stim unit and I put it up a little too high, could give you some vertigo. So all right, I'll admit to it, I kind of lied to him. I said, yeah, sure, just come in. Because he had told me the mechanism and I had it in the back of my head that you had probably concussed yourself. So what he explained was he was doing the weight and his head was whipping back and forth. So we all have to know now that hitting the head doesn't cause a concussion. It's the whip.
That's true too, right? Like I remember I was like, because you were asking me and I'm like, I didn't hit my head. And then I didn't even realize that I'd done that workout 2 days prior to having the vertigo symptom. And then I was like, holy, I didn't realize that just dropping the bar on like too high up on my neck, I was whipping my head. And somebody that I worked out with that day, one of my friends, she was joking with me, and at the end of the WOD, she's like, were you crying during the WOD? I was like, oh, well, there's no crying in CrossFit, joking around. But she saw the expression on my face that like something was going on. Like my eyes were red and I was hitting myself and whipping myself. So
interesting.
You know.
So you obviously can get a concussion if you hit your head, but the whipping is the key element. It was interesting how we talked about his neck. If you watch the 30-30 with Jim McMahon, he went to Cairo, and we were actually one of the first to talk about how the neck works with our head. And it makes a lot of sense because our spinal column and our brain are made up of our central nervous system, which is the tenet of where chiropractic starts.
So that's what, like when you were adjusting me, I brought up McMahon, we brought up the 30 for 30 because like you would adjust me and then I felt like the tank was full with fog and then I'd get adjusted and it would like subside and clear out.
Well, yeah, I mean, the body's all interconnected. Central, I'm not trying to be funny, is the central nervous system. So it was interesting to consider a concussion. Remember, your brain is 3 pounds.
Right.
That's it. It's the fattest organ in the body. It's about 60% fat, 75% water. The key component to a concussion, believe it or not, is the whip. So the brain's not hard. Our skull is hard, as evidenced by the fact that when you think about it, the bikers are the #1 volume concussion because they hit the head, but they're wearing a helmet. The helmet protects against skull fracture.
Right.
Lacrosse players, football players. #1 actually now, just as an aside, #1 concussive athlete, female soccer players, and we'll explain why in a little while. But for you, though, whipping back and forth of this soft jelly brain, not that your brain is soft, everybody's brain is soft. It's like mom's jelly. I think I just got
insulted.
No, not at all. So that jelly, and it whips, in that whip, it rips open. And that's where the damage is. But what's most interesting about that, and we were just talking about it before we were to go live, there's something called axons. They're like branches that intertwine the lobes of your brain. Your brain has several different parts. They call it like lobes, like left arm, left leg, right leg. These axons hold it all together like little branches, and when they stretch, there's part of the injury from that whip. Interesting also with you, some of your symptoms where you got very tired very easily, that's because you had a change in metabolism. So some key takeaways there is you burn a lot more glucose. Your body goes from anaerobic to aerobic. So you popped all this glucose, and now your body's craving glucose. And if you don't think so, think about that. We all went to college, we stood up one night to study. Man, let me go pig out. You didn't go pig out on fat, you picked out on carbohydrates and sugar. So anyway, the brain's a very unique organ, and what you did was you whipped it. So you spoke a lot about adjustments. So I adjusted the cervical spine, I adjusted the thoracic spine. We did some soft tissue like active release. Some of the bigger muscles are the posterior triangle. For all the docs out there, it's called the rectus capitis posterior minor is the key, because they call it a myodural region. It ties in. So in any case, we did some soft tissue. Some of the big takeaways that you mentioned nutrition. We did some laser, low-level laser, or corneal laser. Remember, we put you in almost like a helmet. So the problem with a concussion is 6 hours after an injury, brain cells start to die. Now you talked about the gut. When the brain has an injury, the brain and the gut are intertwined by this nerve called the vagus nerve. It's the walkie-talkie between the gut and the brain. It's fascinating. If you hit your head, it speaks to your gut. If you damage your gut, you speak to your brain. And that's part of the problem. So Chris was getting something like this. And he spoke about that after we adjusted him. He understood the time. He didn't want to go into detail, and that's cool. So the vagus
use your imagination. After he adjusted me, it was I was like, what just happened?
He had the ultimate cleanse, but he didn't do the metagenic detox that we like to do here. So what's interesting, and the reason that the vagus nerve is so interesting, is that when you get injured, you're sympathetic, right. Especially a head injury. You're crying. Sympathetic, fight or flight.
Yeah.
The vagus nerve is parasympathetic. You want a nice balance in this nervous system. So when you get injured, you're unbalanced, you shut your vagus nerve off. When you shut your vagus nerve off, you shut down your digestion. When you shut down your digestion, you're more susceptible to things called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But anyway, you're more susceptible to inability to digest,
right.
Because you went to sympathetic. Now, we spoke about the laser. The laser was a great takeaway for you because the light laser, 635 nanometer laser, decreases inflammation in the brain. This transcranial laser was great. So that really helped you and helps you recover. In addition to nutrients, and I think we can go into some of the nutrients that I gave you. Number one, diet's a key element. Told him to up his protein, make sure he eats some carbohydrate. Chris loves to do CrossFit, so a lot of CrossFitters do a little bit more paleo. They don't go as carbohydrate. Carbohydrates were a key component 7 to 10 days after concussion. After concussion, it doesn't matter if you don't have symptoms. You did. Your glucose isn't going to turn on, and you're still going to have some damage. It takes a minimum of 7 to 10 days. So even if you have an athlete or somebody without symptoms, you still got to watch them for that 7 to 10 day period. In addition, I made him go back and exercise. I didn't tell him to go put his football helmet on like we're in CrossFit and run into the wall, but exercise. The key component and the thing that you really want to stimulate in your brain is something called brain-derived neurotrophic factors. It's a protein enzyme. All the data in the literature speak to this BDNF. If we can upregulate and stimulate BDNF, you get something called neurogenesis.
So I think it's interesting though, because when I feel like if anybody suffered from a concussion, there was part of me that just wanted to like stay home in bed because my brain felt like such sludge. But I know that I always feel better when I work out because I do CrossFit so much. And I remember you kept texting me to check in on me, like, how you feeling, how you doing? And I'm like, yeah, which is great though. And I'm like, I gotta work out. And you're like, yeah, you know, the workout helps. And when I finally would work out afterward, I felt amazing. Like I'd finally get the clarity back in my brain. Felt like I was thinking appropriately, breathing appropriately, but then it would still fade away. And I feel like I would imagine that athletes, and maybe I'm wrong here, that athletes that suffer from concussions might be more in tune to the symptoms because they're so much more in tune to their bodies. Like I felt it because I'm aware of, like I know when I put something in my body how I feel, I know how my sleep affects me, I know how alcohol affects my body, and I was so cognizant of like every uptick and every downtick of everything that I was experiencing that the thing that made me feel the best was always working out, always.
Absolutely, and he was doing more cardio stuff. So steady state exercise has really shown to increase that BDNF. So that's why we're feeling so good. So the idea of rest, you should not rest up to that first week. You should exercise. You just don't want to bang your head.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem, and that's part of the reason he felt better. So exercise was a key component also to making you better. So some of the supplements that we gave him, when we talked about the diet a little bit, up carbohydrates, believe it or not, up protein. What I gave him was magnesium L-threonate. Magnesium L-threonate is being studied. The big study came out in September 2016, MIT, pretty good school. And they talked about this magnesium being the only magnesium that passes the blood-brain barrier. When you damage your brain and the blood-brain barrier is damaged, everything goes into your cerebral spinal fluid. That's a fluid in your spinal cords. So the only magnesium that does that, only 15% is magnesium L-threonate. What's great about it is it's great for overall lack or stopping aging in the brain, 9 to 14 years. It slows it down, and it's great for anybody who has Alzheimer's. 80% of those plaquing that everybody gets in Alzheimer's, ALS now, things like that, which I know you have a personal story.
I'm saying that because my father suffered from ALS for 6 years, which eventually took his life, unfortunately. So I'm very familiar with, you know, a disease of that nature, ugly disease.
A disease of the brain, and you know, I mean, not to get off the topic, but ALS, which used to be called Lou Gehrig's, they thought Lou Gehrig, it was a special disease, but now they're thinking he played football at Columbia and in the time that he played baseball.
Oh, he played baseball, yeah.
They
documented that he had numerous concussions.
And some gut issues also, even though he died so very young. So brain is a key component to overall health, and you'll see us talk a lot more about brain health and have some answers for brain health, but the threonate was the #1 form of magnesium. I strongly recommend it. We used some glutathione, 5 nutrients that make glutathione the body's biggest intracellular antioxidant. Glutathione has been studied to decrease brain tissue damage by 70%. So I gave him that. We also gave him some acetyl L-carnitine, really good to help with neurodegeneration and things of that nature. You got some fish oils especially the DHA, great for cell membrane health. SPMs, specialized pro-resolving mediators. The only thing I know to help resolve inflammation, key component for him was to resolve inflammation, any degeneration in the brain, and a quality multivitamin that really enabled him multivitamin, multiminerals, and phytonutrients, which was really critical because these nutrients speak to the cells to enable us to stimulate the healing process. So everything was pointed there. And I gave him a probiotic because I wanted to ensure that his gut got healthy, even though I know he has pretty good gut health because he's a patient, and as you all know, if you're going to come in here, I'm going to fix your gut or you're not going to last long.
Sure.
So we did some rehab, and now we're at the point where we're going to do some visual acuity, some real good literature just coming out on what I talk about visual acuity, where we're going to make him do exercises. Everything's based on input in his eyes, visual acuity. Carrick just did a great study that just came out that talked about the idea of visual acuity and gaze stabilization, lateral information, lateral stimuli, so he can start using his brain and moving, because if his brain is the chip, if his brain doesn't process the information, he's going to move from it.
Yep.
I mean, you're literally going to look like that kid who's drunk and running around in the schoolyard when he was 16 or 17 or something.
Speaking of drunk, if you suffer from a concussion, don't drink. Last week I was on vacation, I had a couple of cocktails, and the next morning it exacerbated everything that I was experiencing, and I felt like I took a step back. I mean, it was worth it, but still. I definitely felt like the alcohol was had amplified impact from the hangover. The next day I was like, whoa, I shouldn't have done that.
That says that his blood-brain barrier isn't healed yet, because alcohol passes the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
So that just shows, that's why you get drunk, because it passes the blood-brain barrier. That's why when I drink a lot of coffee, I become very chatty or loquacious, if you will, because that passes the blood-brain barrier. It's the only reason, my friend.
I was going to say, it's just because of the coffee.
I get a coffee IV while I sleep, my friend.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Good stuff. We wanted to share that with you. I hope everybody out there, if they have any questions, I'm always there. There's a lot more to come in the brain. It's all about the brain. It's all about the gut. That's where we're at. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me at 914-287-6464. John's going to ask me how they can get in touch with me. You know my Facebook. Do me a favor, guys. Share this with everybody. We, as chiropractors, we as manual practitioners, we here in America, we are not getting enough information. Everybody out there probably has had a concussion. There's a lot of people suffering from concussion. Brain degeneration is running rampant. Please share this information. You want to say something?
Yeah, what I was going to say is that I don't think that I would have come to a doctor like yourself to get treated with concussion had I not been working with you, known you, and become friends with you. And I think that that's the biggest lesson for everybody that's listening, that there are ways that you can get treated through a chiropractor that will effectively help remedy the symptoms that you're experiencing from a concussion. And that the whole brain-gut connection, it was like in one ear and out the other until you started doing it, and I literally physically felt it, where I was like, oh my God, everything that you've been talking about for the past year clicked in the weeks that you were treating me. I was like, oh, he's so right, it's unbelievable. So the guy's the real deal. He's the best in the business. He knows what he's doing.
Personal experience, and that goes to show why social media and or any form of communication is key, because if we don't message who we are as chiropractors and doctors, somebody else will. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I'm sitting here with Chris is I wasn't happy how everybody else was messaging my field and me. So this is my TV channel, if you will. This is my forum. This is our forum, everybody. Share this. Always yours in health, Dr. Rob.